coming to you live from Israel with all of the top headlines coming from the region. It's currently 7 a.m. in New York and 2 p.m. here in Israel, and these are all of the latest developments. New developments in the now revealed coordination between Israel and Gulf states during Operation Roaring Lion. The Prime Minister's office confirmed late last night that Netanyahu held a secret in-person meeting with Emirati President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed in the UAE. According to the PMO, this meeting paved the way for historic and unprecedented cooperation, including the coordination on a response to the threat by the Islamic regime, but also the sale of Israel's Iron Dome to the UAE to protect from missile and drone attacks by the regime. But this morning, the Emirati Foreign Ministry is denying this claim, saying the country cooperates with Israel only within the framework of the Abraham Accords and not in secret or undisclosed manners. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is saying Tehran knew all along of this secret meeting. Whether the meeting took place or not, the coordination between Israel and the UAE cannot be denied or refuted, making the Abraham Accords incredibly useful during the ongoing war with the Islamic regime. And the United States has not responded yet to these reports as President Donald Trump is focused on his meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The two-day summit in Beijing is aimed at strengthening cooperation with the Chinese leader, claiming that Beijing and Washington should be partners rather than rivals, citing common interests that, quote, outweigh their differences. President Trump responded with praise of Jinping, calling him a great leader after landing in the Asian country. Ahead of the meeting, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said China has influence on Iran and can play a larger role in pressuring the Islamic regime. Take a listen.
Because China's economy is export-driven, meaning their economy is fueled not by what they consume domestically, but by what they make and sell to other countries. Well, if all the countries of the world economies are melting down because of this crisis in the Straits, they're going to be buying less Chinese product, and the Chinese exports are going to drop precipitously. So it's in their interest to resolve this. We hope to convince them to play a more active role in getting Iran to walk away from what they're doing now and trying to do now in the Persian Gulf.
And now new reports coming out of the Strait of Hormuz claim the Islamic regime has captured a commercial shipping vessel, an Indian flagship, and is rerouting it toward Iranian territory. We'll obviously follow this development closely. But joining me now to discuss all of these latest developments is Fleur Hassan Nachum, the Foreign Ministry Special Envoy. Fleur, good to have you on the show with us today.
Thanks so much, Nevo.
So to start, what do you make of these reports and the conflicting messaging when it comes to Netanyahu's secret visit to the UAE? Israel claiming it happened, the Emiratis claiming it didn't, Tehran saying it did. What are your thoughts?
I just think we are a country that doesn't know not to leak. And there are moments when we have to be discreet, and there are moments when we have to do things and not advertise them. And I think this is one of those moments. I don't understand what the net gain is here. But if the UAE wanted to keep the secret and we've come out and let the cat out of the bag, I think it's poor diplomatic form, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. From our side or from their side?
From our side. Because ultimately, the UAE have been incredible allies to us. Let's think about it. First of all, they were the first people to sign. They were the first signatories of the Abraham Accords. Trade, even during the war, trade has been going up in double digits since the beginning of the war. And of course, before that, every single year, trade goes up and trade is strengthened. Now, after October 7th, with all the horrible toxic propaganda that we've had around the world, you know, they didn't blink once. Anybody who would have said to us, September 23, would the UAE-Israel relationship with the Abraham Accords still be standing through a regional war, would have said, I doubt it. And it did stand. And they have been good allies, and we've been good allies. So I just don't know why we have to ruin it with political bluster.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that their response and the manner of their response saying, no, this actually never happened and we're acting in accordance with the Abraham Accords, do you think that that is because they were essentially blindsided by Israel's release of this information? Or do you think that there's maybe other alliances, other countries in the regions that they're trying to appease, and this is quite the bombshell announcement?
Well, probably both. You know, I think that if there would have been better coordination, or at least informing them this is what we're doing, give them a chance to say, listen, don't do it now, we'll do it at a later stage. I'm not sure what happened. I wasn't in those rooms. But what I'm saying is that we have to learn in Israel to be real diplomats. And real diplomacy means that it's like an iceberg. Most of it you don't see. There's a reason for that. They may have reasons. We may have reasons. It came out last week that we're helping them with their missile defense technology. We've known that. That's the worst kept secret. For years, we've known that we've been supplying them with technology. But in Israel, honestly, in the government, we have a leaking problem that we need to resolve for people to be able to trust us.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to discuss sort of the underlying tones of this whole story and just discuss the significance of this, I guess you could call it, shift in regional dynamics. Who in the region still has loyalties to the Islamic regime, excluding, of course, the proxies in the region?
Well, excluding the proxies, I'm not sure they've got that many friends left. Of course, their natural allies have been China and Russia. Now, I think, connecting it to the visit of Trump at the moment, President Trump to China, ultimately, the United States has already won in the sense that China didn't come to the rescue of Iran. They certainly don't want to get mixed up in a military entanglement for the sake of Iran. Yes, they want the cheap oil that was sanctioned oil, and that's why it was cheap. And yes, they're more interested in Taiwan than in anything to do with Iran. They do need the energy. But I think that President Trump could come to an agreement with them. And as we saw Marco Rubio say, they really want more involvement with the Chinese to try and get the Islamic Republic, to come down from the very tall tree that they've put themselves up.
Let's just discuss more as you bring up Trump's summit in China. This isn't his first visit, but it is the first in his current term, and he's definitely the only American president in the last decade to go and visit in China. So what do you think will be discussed other than Iran? And do you think that Trump can maybe achieve with this other key player, something significant, considering these two global superpowers coming together and agreeing that they actually have more things in common than differences?
Actually do think they have more things in common, because at the end of the day, the Chinese are mainly interested in their economy. They're not interested in any type of political ideology this way or that way. They are purely interested in their own economic development. And so I do think that they do have common ground. But, we think that the main topic is Iran. But for the Chinese, as I said, the main topic is Taiwan. And so I believe that President Trump is now going with a card, and the card is Iran. And so he has a card now to negotiate with China over Taiwan. Of course, Taiwan doesn't accept any type of Chinese sovereignty over themselves. They want to be independent. They are independent, and America supports that right. So to be honest, I think that in my assessment, it'll be much more likely to find a resolution with Iran than it is to find a quick resolution with Taiwan.
Interesting. Could you just elaborate? What does this sort of revolution with Iran mean? I mean, obviously, Trump is going to try and convince China, see if he can sort of squeeze the Islamic regime into a deal or an end to hostilities in the Strait of Hormuz, for example, maybe even an end to the war in general. But I guess on that front, what would that even look like? What would that entail?
It may even look like just making sure the Chinese don't get involved in a bigger way, not helping them rearm, not helping them with their ballistic missiles that they have to replenish. Maybe the deal is, and like I say, I'm saying just from opinion, maybe the deal is you stay out of here, we'll stay out of there. Let's talk about rare materials. We always think here in the Middle East that it's all about us, but there's a much bigger global chess game going on, and that's all about who's going to be the superpower of this millennial. Is it going to be China, which is really charging towards economic expansion, or is it going to be the United States of America, who of course have their own economic vision, but in America, there's more ideology, there's more geopolitical ideology, and there's more of a geopolitical game going on in the Middle East.
So you mentioned this chess game, but on a personal note, if you can give us your personal opinion, Fleur, who do you think is in, I guess, more of a position of power? Who's really holding the cards? Because when it comes to the United States versus Iran, it's quite evident that the United States has the power, and Trump always says, we're holding all the cards. But when it comes to the United States versus China, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that what this Iranian war has done, and people, when I was in America last week, all the mainstream media is talking about how America is losing the war. I don't think they could be more wrong. I actually think that President Trump is going to this negotiation with the Chinese with a card in his hand, and that is the energy that the Chinese need. And so that's going to be the game. How can we give you some here, and what are you going to give us there?
Absolutely. Well, that is unfortunately all the time that we have for today. But Fleur Hassan Nahum, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
And really quickly, before we move on, a quick word from our partners at U Haifa.
At U Haifa International, diversity isn't a slogan, it's a daily reality. On a beautiful mountain campus overlooking the Mediterranean, students from different countries, religions, and languages come together to learn, live, and grow.
We always say, if you want to see how to make peace in the Middle East, come to Haifa.
Haifa is Israel's most culturally diverse city, and the University of Haifa reflects that spirit, celebrating different traditions, perspectives, and stories. Here, diversity shapes richer discussions, deeper friendships, and a community where everyone belongs.
Our community of students comes from many, many different countries, speaks different languages, celebrates different holidays, and we make sure that everyone feels at home.
And in this multicultural environment, U Haifa master students gain far more than a degree. They learn to embrace their differences, find mutual ground, and thrive in global settings.
Great academic and professional opportunities, great people, lots of history, so I would say just go for it.
And moving on now to the northern front, where amid diplomatic efforts, the fighting has not stopped in southern Lebanon. According to the IDF, troops on the ground continue locating terror infrastructure in the area of the Litani River, ordering airstrikes to eliminate the threats accordingly. The military says over 40 targets have been struck in the last 24 hours alone. All this while Hezbollah continues sending over rockets and explosive-laden drones toward Israeli troops and Israeli communities near the border with Lebanon. In the latest such attack, a drone fell in Rosh Hanikra, the northernmost point on Israel's coast. In the attack, one person was lightly injured, another severely injured, and a third who was originally declared severely injured. Well, his condition has since deteriorated significantly in the last hour. He has now been declared in critical condition. Sirens also sounded in Mevaot Hermon and Misgav Am this morning, meaning that the threat to northern Israeli communities is still very much alive and well. The army says it will continue operations against Hezbollah infrastructure and respond to any attempt to target Israel or its forces on the ground. And now on to the Gaza front. The IDF and Shin Bet have announced that a senior Hamas commander involved in the October 7th attack on the Nahal Oz base has been killed in a Gaza airstrike, the same airstrike that eliminated the son of Hamas chief negotiator Khalil al-Khaya. According to the military, Hamza Sharbasi, a commander in Hamas's Sajaiya battalion, was struck in an airstrike in northern Gaza last week. Sharbasi took part in the October 7th assault on the Nahal Oz military base, where Israeli soldiers were killed and abducted. The IDF says Sharbasi has recently been operating near the so-called Yellow Line, advancing terror plots against Israeli forces stationed in the area. Meanwhile, in Cairo, reports suggest that negotiations between the Gaza Board of Peace officials and Hamas officials have reached an impasse. The deadlock reportedly focuses on Hamas disarmament, a non-negotiable condition for the United States, but a demand Hamas has rejected firmly. According to reports, the terror group is now demanding a complete IDF withdrawal from the Yellow Line and a halt to eliminations such as that of Sharbasi. And so joining me now to discuss all of these latest developments on all of the various fronts is Major in the Reserves Elliot Chodov, a political and military analyst. Elliot, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Always a pleasure.
So to start, the war is it's clearly not over. And when the IDF says there are threats in the area, these threats, they're real. Even though we don't see the casualties or injuries every day, it's evidently not safe for Israelis in the north. People are calling this a fragile ceasefire. But in your view, is there really any ceasefire at all?
There is no ceasefire. It's a rather classic we seize, they fire, and it's been going on since day one. What Hezbollah is doing is predictably, and they've done this repeatedly over the decades, slowly and incrementally escalating, starting with strikes against Israeli forces in South Lebanon, building up to, as we saw today, an attack significantly by a drone against Rosh Hanikra. And I say significantly because this was not a stray rocket. Had it been a rocket that fell, they could claim, well, we weren't really aiming there. The rocket didn't land where we aimed at, and so on. Drones don't work that way. They hit what they were aiming at, and they hit 3 civilians on the Israeli side of the border. They are waiting to see the response. And here I have to say, unfortunately, it seems that Israel is reverting to the failed strategy or lack of strategy of the decade leading up to October 7th, which is to allow these incremental increases and not respond to them properly. What we're seeing in the reports, we're striking a leader here and an infrastructure there. These are tactical successes, but I'm going to call them micro-tactical. In other words, each hit is a success, but it's having no overall effect. In the meantime, Hezbollah is rebuilding, and it's pushing forward. It's escalating, and we're permitting it to happen.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess my follow-up question is, why does the IDF not have a response, an appropriate response to these explosive-laden drones? We have these new FPV drones, these fiber-guided drones. They can't be interrupted by communication signals. So, and the IDF has said before that they didn't have a response for it. Now they're saying they're going to build a factory to create some sort of tactical response. But that could take a very long time. So as of right now, there's still a significant threat. My question is, how can this be? Israel is so, advanced when it comes to military equipment. We're selling our technologies all over the world, the Iron Dome and other aerial interceptors. How can we not protect the citizens of northern Israel from these drones?
We made a technical error over the years, and it's a classic technical error of high-tech societies, which is to think that the only way to defeat high tech is with higher tech, and clearly Hezbollah is not going to out high tech Israel. So what Hezbollah did, and by the way, Hamas did exactly the same thing before October 7th, is not to try to compete high tech, but rather go low tech and beneath Israel's capabilities rather than try to get above them. So while Israel is leading edge in the world electronically, Hezbollah says, okay, we're going to use stuff that can't be stopped electronically. We're going to go back to fiber optics, unreeled cables, technology that dates back to the 1960s and 70s, but that now needs to be stopped with a physical kinetic means, or by attacking the launching areas, which is also a possibility, but can't be stopped in the quick, neat, efficient technology of pressing a button and having the technology fried, so to speak, because there isn't any.
Interesting. And so how do you think we get out of this mess, essentially? I mean, clearly the IDF can't dismantle Hezbollah alone. Striking targets and engaging in close-range combat, that's not going to remove Hezbollah from the power that they hold. Do we need diplomacy as well to restore security to the north?
Ultimately, Hezbollah needs to be removed by Lebanon. How much it can be driven back and paralyzed for a limited period of time or for an extended period of time is a combination of Israeli capabilities, what I would call a full court press. In other words, it's not just where you are when you cease fire or hostilities, but rather what happens afterwards. Do we keep following up? Do we keep putting pressure on them? We were doing that until President Trump essentially vetoed it. So now, thanks to American diplomacy, Israel is very limited in its response, which is a problem in and of itself. of course, all this is equally tied to the outcome with Iran. If Iran continues to be the prime source, and I won't say supporter of Hezbollah because Hezbollah is part of the Quds force of the IRGC. It's not a proxy. As long as Iran has the capability and continues to do it, we're going to be seeing this popping up again and again in the months and years to come.
Mm-hmm. And so the IDF right now is actually operating deep inside southern Lebanon. Do you foresee the IDF claiming this, forward defensive line area up to the Litani, maybe even north of the Litani, establishing presence and staying there, kind of like how we see in Gaza with the Yellow Line?
It could do it. I think it would be a mistake. I believe that a military that is dug into territory that's not its own, ultimately, and we're doing it already, handing over the initiative to the other side. It's kind of automatic. Once you start moving, the other side can take the initiative. It's one thing to be holding the line of the Israeli border, and here I want to be clear, that doesn't mean ceding South Lebanon to Hezbollah. We can continue to operate in South Lebanon without actually sitting there in force. And we certainly have the capability, mobile capability, special forces capability to deny South Lebanon to Hezbollah if we're active and aggressive about it without having divisions physically sitting on the ground there.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I actually want to continue on this motif if we can and draw a parallel with you between Gaza and Lebanon. Obviously, vastly different fronts, vastly different proxies that we're dealing with, but the ideology is quite similar. I mean, these terror groups, they're really not going to stop attacking Israel as long as they can. As I just read in that Gaza report, a terrorist who was active on October 7th, who hasn't been eliminated yet. He wasn't hiding, per se. He was near IDF troops and planning attacks on them. And this is what, with the so-called, ceasefire and with this yellow line established, we're seeing similarities between Lebanon and Gaza. Are we heading toward the same place with the Lebanese front that we see in Gaza, where we never really get any progress in removing the threat? We just push them away a little bit?
Once again, it depends in large part on us. In Gaza, it depends on us even more than it does in Lebanon, because Gaza is its own anarchy that's being controlled by Hamas. At least in Lebanon, ostensibly, there's a government that has an interest in disarming Hezbollah as well, and I'll emphasize the ostensibly. In Gaza, we're faced with the ruler is Hamas, and that's something that we were close to preventing, and I don't want to talk about how close, but we had made strides toward preventing them from regaining power. Once again, ceasefire imposed. Witkoff says Hamas promised him they were going to disarm, and Hamas promise is almost as good as a Hamas guarantee. Today, of course, they're saying they're not going to do it, and I'm not at all surprised. We're going to be facing, and I think you put it very well, both of these groups and others, their raison d'etre is to destroy Israel. And that's not a secret. It's written into their main documents. They draw their ideology essentially from the same sources, which is ultimately the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt, written in the 50s and 60s. And this is what they do. This is what they live for, these organizations. So it's not that fighting Israel is a policy that is part of some grander existence. Their existence is to destroy Israel.
Right, absolutely. And therein lies the threat, the word threat. Elliot, before we wrap up, if I may, I'd like to segue a little bit into politics with the time we have left, as we may very well be heading into elections over the ultra-Orthodox, let's call it the dissatisfaction with the government's efforts to pass a bill to exempt the ultra-Orthodox yeshiva students from drafting to the military. So I want to ask you, why do you think the religious parties are so willing to dissolve this current Knesset, which has been relatively favorable to the ultra-Orthodox, considering everything? I mean, surely there isn't a better alternative for them. So what is your analysis of all this latest news?
First of all, we're approaching elections regardless. Now we're counting months, weeks, months, not years. They're making their own political decisions based on looking forward. And here again, to reiterate, there are going to be elections this year. The question is now, how much do they do to shore up, and all the parties are doing this, incidentally, not just the ultra-Orthodox ones, shore up their voting constituency, show that they are holding the line for their constituency, and by bringing down the government over it, they can turn to their constituents who are largely solid, but not 100%. There's always some weaknesses on the edges, and say, hey, look, we brought down the government over this issue. We're fighting for you. You need to vote for us. And if it means for them another seat or two in the next elections, it's worth it to them.
Interesting. I actually really liked how you put that, and maybe other political parties should be taking notes, as that's not a common enough theme, I would say, in Israeli politics. But with that, we do have to wrap up our interview for today. Major Elliot Chodov, I want to thank you again so much for coming on the show and giving us your insights and your analysis.
My pleasure.
And now Israel is expanding its national summer school program this year with a major new focus on artificial intelligence as the government moves to address war-related learning gaps while also preparing students for a high-tech future. The program, announced by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu alongside Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and also Education Minister Yoav Kish, will run through the end of July for kindergarten through third grade, with broader educational frameworks for older students. Officials say the plan combines small group instruction in math, language, and English with new training in artificial intelligence and other digital skills that could potentially be very, very useful. Now, the government says the initiative is designed both to close the educational gaps that have unfortunately been widened during the war with the Islamic regime, but also to position Israeli students at the forefront of global technology and its recent advancements. Prime Minister Netanyahu called artificial intelligence a national strategic priority, saying Israel's future competitiveness depends on early education in emerging technologies. The Education Ministry says more than 1.1 billion shekels will be invested in summer programs this year, with subsidized fees for families based on income levels. Take a listen to Prime Minister's notes.
ואני יודע שהעתיד של כל ילדי ישראל קשור בטבורו ב-AI. ולכן בחופשת הקיץ הקרובה אנחנו נפעיל מסגרות מיוחדות לילדי ישראל, מגני הילדים עד כיתות ט', ובמסגרת זו אנחנו נכשיר אותם בתחום הבינה המלאכותית שמשנה את העולם כולו. אני רוצה שתלמידי ישראל יהיו הכי טובים בצ'אט GPT, יהיו הכי טובים בקלוד, ועוד בהרבה תחומים אחרים, ועוד לפני הבגרויות. כמובן שאנחנו נסייע גם לתלמידים, לכל התלמידים, להשלים פערי לימוד שנצברו במהלך המלחמה. כי העתיד שלנו זה קודם כל הילדים שלנו.
And finally, before we end the broadcast for today, tonight, Israel is marking Jerusalem Day, with celebrations, ceremonies, and thousands of visitors set to gather across the capital to commemorate the city's reunification in 1967. Festivities are taking place throughout Jerusalem, including state ceremonies, memorial events, flag parades, concerts, and special prayers at the Western Wall. Thousands of people, including youth groups, soldiers, and families, are expected to take part in the annual Flag March through the streets of the Old City. Those are the images that you're seeing on your screen right now. Security forces have been deployed across Jerusalem amid heightened alerts as police work to secure major gatherings and holy sites during the holiday. Jerusalem Day marks Israel's capture of East Jerusalem during the 1967 Six-Day War and remains one of the most symbolic days on the Israeli national calendar. So happy Jerusalem Day, and I hope that you get to enjoy your days in the streets of the Holy Land of Jerusalem. And that is a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour, broadcasting live from Israel in the heart of the Middle East. We're here every hour on the hour with all of the latest breaking news, in-depth reports, and exclusive insights into the stories shaping the region and the world. Don't forget to scan the QR code that's on your screen for more updates on our WhatsApp channel. In the meantime, I'm Deva Klein, and thank you so much for watching.